Tonight, federal government to arraign suspended central bank governor Emefiele on Thursday on 20 new charges bordering on procurement fraud. And we shall not give in to terrorist propaganda, says the Nigerian Air Force, following a video circulating on social media platforms allegedly depicting the wreckage of a crashed Mi-171 helicopter in Niger State. We begin tonight with breaking news from the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation Limited, NNPCL. The company saying it has signed a commitment letter and term sheet with the Afrexim Bank for an emergency $3 billion crude oil repayment loan. Speaking through a statement in their verified Twitter handle, the company explained the agreement was jointly signed by both parties at the bank's headquarters in Cairo, Egypt, and the loan will provide some immediate disbursement that will enable the NNPC Limited to support the federal government in its ongoing fiscal and monetary policy reforms aimed at stabilizing the exchange rate market. Recall that the federal government last week reported a 13.6% drop in daily crude oil production in the month of July, leaving the country seriously short of dollar revenues from crude export. In the same vein, the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, NUPRC, indicates that the latest production data reveals that production averaged 1.08 million barrels per day compared to 1.25 million barrels per day recorded in June. However, the July production figure was at a major setback for government, which has a production target of 1.69 million barrels per day in the 2023 budget, while the volume of production was also significantly lower than the 1.7 million barrels per day production quota allocated to the country by the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC. Now, let's keep you up to speed with what is happening around the country, and here is our political roundup stories.
Former Nigerian First Lady Dame Patience Jonathan today has paid a solidarity visit to the First Lady of Nigeria, Senator Oluremi Tinubu, at the State House in Abuja. Mrs. Jonathan thanked Senator Oluremi Tinubu for how she has impacted the lives of Nigerian women so far. She explains that the visit is imperative as a former president's wife and to also support and encourage her on things that would move the nation forward.
I have come here to encourage you, to support you, because we are one country. And our country must move forward, and for the country to be better, because it's our country. We have no other country.
Governor Dauda Lawal of Zamfara State has sworn in 18 commissioners to form his cabinet as he introduces key performance index to checkmate the activities of the commissioners on a regular basis. Speaking during the swearing-in ceremony in Gusau, the state capital, Governor Lawal implores the new cabinet members to shun corrupt practices, saying his administration cannot afford to disappoint Zamfara residents who are yearning for a positive change.
This will be the parameters you will be assessed by the expectation to which your key performance indices will be hinged on.
In Abia State, the Judicial Panel of Inquiry on Recovery of Abia State Government Properties has held its inaugural sitting with a commitment to fish out individuals who looted government resources. This panel, instituted by the state governor, Mr. Alex Oti, has a mandate to recover stolen assets belonging to the state government. In her opening remark, its chairman, Justice Florence Duroha Igwe, explains that the panel of inquiry is not to witch hunt any individual, but to ensure looted government assets from past administrations are recovered by the state. And in Yobe State, a group called the All Progressives Congress Youth Movement have declared their support for one of Governor Mimala Buni's aides, Ali Ibrahim Zana, to contest in the by-election of Yobe State Senatorial District. The youth run across the 7 local government areas of the state that made up the Yobe East Senatorial District are asking the party to allow their aspirants succeed Ibrahim Gaidam, who is now minister designate.
We find it very necessary to quickly set an agenda to ourselves in making sure we promote the right person to replace him and build on his legacies.
Controversies have continued to trail the purported demolition of a property belonging to a PDP chieftain in Imo State, Mr. Mike Ikuku, by the Owerri Capital Development Authority, OCDA. While recounting the ordeal where OCDA agents allegedly invaded the hotel with caterpillars, the PDP chieftain, Mr. Mike Ikuku, at a press conference in Owerri, the state capital, claims that the act is politically motivated, a pronouncement the state government has debunked.
If we have issues and disagreements politically, that is not enough reason to brazenly clamp down on my businesses.
I don't see why, you should come out to say that it is politics. Is it politics because it is right for you to build on a green verge?
Welcome to the show. I'm Nel Taigbe, sitting in for your regular host, Sheon Okimbaloe. Now, we'll be starting out a focus on what is going on in the courts, having to do particularly with the suspended governor of the central bank, Mr. Godwin Emefiele. Now, Mr. Emefiele will be arraigned alongside a female CBN employee, Sadatu Yaro, and her company, April 1616 Investment Limited, on the 20 charges of procurement fraud, conspiracy, and conferring corrupt advantages on his associates. The suspended central bank governor, who had been in detention since he was suspended from office on June 9, was accused of conferring corrupt advantages on Yaro, a director in April 1616 Investment Limited. Now, some of the charges that the suspended central bank governor will be having to answer to, he's been accused of conferring corrupt advantages contrary to Section 19 of the Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Act 2000, corruptly awarding contracts for the supply of vehicles to April 1616 Investment Limited, of which the CBN employee Sadatu Yaro is a director, awarding contracts for the supply of 37 Toyota Hilux vehicles at the cost of 854,700,000 naira, awarding a contract for the supply of one Toyota Land Cruiser V8 at the cost of 73,800,000 naira, awarding a contract for the supply of one Toyota Avalon at the cost of 99.9 million naira, awarding a contract for the supply of another Toyota Land Cruiser V8 for 77.050 million naira, awarding a contract for the supply of two Toyota Hilux Shell specification vehicles at the cost of 44.2 million naira, awarding a contract for the purchase of one Toyota Land Cruiser VXR valued at 96 million naira in 2020. Now, Sadatu Yaro and April 1616 Investment Limited are accused of fraudulent acquisition of property for getting a contract from the CBN for the supply of 47 Toyota Hilux vehicles at the cost of 1,885,000,000 naira, 700,000 naira, fraudulent acquisition of property for getting a contract from the CBN for the supply of 10 Mercedes-Benz armored buses at the cost of 2,222,500,000 naira. If guilty, Emefiele may receive a 5-year prison term without the possibility of a fine. Now, all of this might not be too clear to some of us some of our viewers, but we have in the studio, or joining us via virtual platform Zoom to discuss this matter with us, is a senior advocate of Nigeria, Mr. Kayode Adeluola, who joins us via Zoom. Mr. Adeluola, thank you for joining us.
Good evening. Thanks for having me again.
Indeed. Let's get into it real quick. This matter that's coming up in court tomorrow, there are some who are concerned that what was the DSS and the federal government trying to get at? First of all, putting out that charge of illegal possession of firearms and ammunition, and then switching it to this 20-count charge. Was it just to buy time?
Well, quite frankly, Philip, I can't read their minds, but what we can all see, from my perspective, is not playing out very well. First, he was charged with unlawful possession of firearms, and then suddenly we now find that he's been charged under offenses covered by the Corrupt Practices Act. So the question is it a situation in which prosecutors are trying to find something against Mr. Emefiele at all costs, or do we have a situation where the suspended CBN governor has actually committed crime against the state? In my humble opinion, I think Nigerians would have been looking out for offenses committed in line with his duty as central bank governor, perhaps in relation to our foreign reserve or monetary policies or cash stored somewhere or what have you. But when you talk about the CBN governor having awarded contracts for the purchase of the Toyota Land Cruiser or Avalon, that sounds well, then again, those are offenses under the Corrupt Practices Act. Yes, it should be charged, but I'm sure this just takes the wind out of the sail of Nigerians. That's my view.
Okay, but for the CBN governor to be charged with this kind of offenses, those will be wondering what happened to the procurement department in the central bank. Because for a CBN governor, he couldn't possibly be so involved in the procurement of all this number of vehicles as a governor.
I would have thought so too, and unless Mr. Emefiele was a lone ranger and was doing everything by himself without delegating anything, I'd not see how he could have been interested in the award of contract for the purchase of an Avalon car or a Land Cruiser for the price of some 7 million. In fact, a Land Cruiser right now, I'm sure, is over 120 million naira. So, and then again, you ask yourself, why is the DSS interested in what would ordinarily be corrupt practices covered by a statute and the ICPC capable of taking this charges on? Why is the DSS that should be interested in things relating to the security, internal security, concerned about someone who awarded a contract for a Land Cruiser? I don't know. Let's get serious.
Indeed, let's get serious. Let's look at, first of all, his role as a CBN governor and what he would have done as regards monetary policy and fiscal policy. You talked about if he was going to be indeed charged to court. These are the areas where the federal government should have been looking at. And many Nigerians will be concerned, especially how, for instance, amongst the last things that the CBN did just before the elections had to do with the redesign of the Naira. And there are those who are concerned how that impacted on the economy of both the country and the individuals. Do you think that's an area that the federal government could have looked at? Is there any breach of any law there?
Yes. We need to find out what the investigators have unraveled, particularly in relation to the exchange of the Naira. Some of us have read on the page of papers on social media that the cost of the printing of the currency was exorbitant. But I wanted to know if that's a fact, if any economic or financial crimes are related to that, then we would like to know, particularly because Nigerians were badly affected by the way the activities relating to the change of the currency were conducted. So those are things I would have wanted to hear. And if the man is not guilty or he has conducted his affairs well, then he should simply be allowed to go home. Otherwise, if we're going to be charging the CBN governor fraudulently, or quote unquote, awarding contracts for the purchase of the Land Cruiser, a lot of former ministers would also go to prison, I think.
These charges here all border on, as I said, bordering on fraud and, contrary to section, corrupt advantage, conferring corrupt advantage. Now, there are issues that many would think that the DSS would have focused on, considering the security of the country. All this had to do with procurement of vehicles and financial impropriety. Is this not a case of interfering in other agencies' duties? For instance, the ICPC that should be looking at financial crimes, and the EFCC. Wouldn't they have been better positioned to handle this?
Yes, indeed. And added to what you have just said, I think the DSS has a lot more on its plate to investigate Who are those kidnapping our compatriots? Who are those behind banditry? Who are those carrying arms around various parts of the country? These are things that people would like to know. These are situations that we have had to live with in the last few years or so. And Nigerians would like to know if some of these people can be unmasked, taken to court, and tried for these crimes against humanity. As against somebody who has bought a car or awarded a contract for the purchase of a Land Cruiser or Avalon car.
But what would
you think about it? I mean, it would be different, for example, if Mr. Emefiele had awarded a contract for the purchase of armored vehicles, then you would say, yeah, what do you intend to do with armored vehicles? Or he awarded contracts for the purchase of arms and ammunition. They would ask him, what are you going to do with those things? Those could be turned to be efforts at destabilizing the state. What's the car? Let's get serious.
You know, you've used that phrase, let's get serious, a couple of times now. And are you implying that the DSS is not serious about this matter? Because this is a serious matter as far as the government is concerned.
Philip, what I'm trying to say is that there are very, very serious things that we need to discuss and get down to business with. People were kidnapped in this country for so long. There were bandits. People were carrying arms and ammunition without let or hindrance. Those are people we must pursue. We want people to be able to go back to their farms without fear. We want people to go about their business. And I want to be able to drive from Lagos to Abuja at night and be assured that I get there safely. Those are important things that have impacted on the economy, on the social life of people. Those are things that we want to unravel. Those are things we want the DSS to deal with, and to deal with them promptly too. Promptly too.
When you say this thing, then the question would be, is there a problem with how the laws are examined, or how the laws that guide the operations of the different agencies of government are crafted? Would that be something that needs to be looked at so that there's clear delineation of responsibilities, and at which point do the different agencies come together?
Let's say this point. Look, all agencies, I'm sure, without a doubt, know where the lines are drawn for them, without a doubt about that. I mean, you saw what happened at the Federal High Court the other day. The correctional facilities officers were there in court. They wanted to take the same gentleman, Godwin Emefiele, into their custody. The ESS insisted on taking him, and there was this fisticuff on the premise of courts. Now, the question you ask is, even if there were some blurred lines and there was uncertainty as to where my own responsibility started and where yours ended, shouldn't they be able to sit together and say, what do you think we should be doing here? If they're not sure, they should be able to ask the lawyers and the legal departments. But we don't want to see DSS taking to court people who should be accused of crime under the Corrupt Practices or EFCC, or EFCC taking people to court when the police force should simply be doing it. And perhaps we should begin to consider streamlining these agencies such that we have huge departments of the police force that can do these things. We don't need to have too many agencies that can't tell where they start and where they finish.
At what point would we begin to do that? If we have all of these agencies, because now we're talking about reducing the cost of governance, and there are those who are arguing. I mean, look at the Russell report that talked about merging some agencies of government to the point where we're cutting down the cost of governance, not necessarily laying people off, but reducing the cost of running all of government agencies across the country. At what point do we get there where we say, okay, enough is enough, this is where we need to draw the line?
We are at that point now. Let us reduce cost of governance. Like I've had a lot of friends at discussion say that the optics are not very good. We find lawmakers buying for themselves very expensive cars. We find monies being distributed at a time. A peculiar are actually hungry. I mean, you see, the word hunger sounds very belittling, but the truth is that some people cannot even put food on the table. Well, you always find poor people in every society, but our situation is becoming dire, and so people who are in government must begin to act in a way that see them as being empathic, and the empathy they must show should not only be relating to our daily lives, but it must relate to how they also conduct governance, so that even those who are in corporate entities will also see themselves as having to toe the line. We should stop throwing money around in the face of those who lack. So we have a situation on our hands where we must begin to look at the cost of governance seriously and cut cost of governance, not only because we cannot even afford it, but because really and truly, people must see that government also sees their sorrow, their punishments, their hunger, and their discomfort.
You know, when you say we're at that point where these things should be put to the test, so to speak, there will be arguments, though, that many in times past there were lawyers who could stand up and say, okay, I'm fighting for the rights of the Nigerian. But at this stage, it appears the lawyers are more focused on making money for themselves and their families, not thinking about fighting for the rights of Nigerians. So some will say, where are the Gani Fayamis of today?
Quite frankly, you hit the nail on the head there. Really and truly, lawyers have their different callings. And I'd say that there's some lawyers who believe that, they're commercial lawyers, they're corporate lawyers, and that's where they stand. There are those who are criminal law practitioners, and that's where they stand. And then there are those who believe in human rights. We all can't face the same areas of practice. That's true. But having said that, the practice expects that, particularly those of us who are senior lawyers, to do pro bono cases and help the society, because we have a responsibility. And everyone has that responsibility. Journalists also have the responsibility, because we have seen headlines that scream and take away the hope of common man. It isn't everything journalists must publish. It isn't everything that you must say, because some of those things also do not show sufficient empathy. And as such, we all must have our hands on deck. I quite agree that we must begin to have lawyers filing cases in court like the days of the late Chief Gani Fayamis, and to some extent, some of our colleagues are still here. So I quite agree. We must, as a people generally, I'm not talking about a particular profession. I'm speaking generally. We must begin to see ourselves as our brothers' keepers.
In seeing ourselves as our brothers' keepers, indeed, everyone needs to wake up, because the state of the country as it is, the economic situation and how it's impacting on everyone, I mean, everybody's feeling it at different levels. But some would say, what's the lowest hanging fruits that we can pick on if we're looking at the law, security, and the economy generally? At what point do we bring all of it together and say, okay, we're good to go as a people?
Well, I like the fact that this current government has announced that they're going to attack food security frontally. Now, like the Yoruba people will say, once hunger has been taken off your list of issues concerning your poverty, then your poverty is greatly reduced. There is no reason why any Nigerian, no matter how poor, should go to bed without supper. We have the land to produce the food. We have the labor with which we can do it. And so everyone should have food to eat. But what has happened? A lot of people who used to even go to the farms can no longer go there because of the insecurity we just spoke about. So let's just give a lot of food to people to eat to start with. It gives them energy, gives them some measure of contentment. And then that also translates to employment. You cannot imagine how many people were employed if all of a sudden we have all our farms rejuvenated, and then we have plants that are also doing some beneficiation to these products. So we can export and more foreign exchange and a lot of things will happen. But unless we begin to do those little things here and there, we're going to be talking about the bigger things, or want to deal with foreign exchange, what have you. Okay. A lot of people just want to have something to eat.
If I may come in here, I asked this question to say, at what point do we bring the law, security, and all of us and the economy together to come to this point? In charging the suspended CBN governor, the federal government says he went contrary to Section 19 of the Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Act of 2000, conferring corrupt advantage contrary to Section 19 of the Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Act. You are the senior advocate of Nigeria. Does that, in all of these things, charges have been listed, at what point do they all go contrary to this section of the Corrupt Practices Act?
I mean, be unable to answer that question unless I have the evidence before me. You see, when you charge a man to court, you must bring evidence to prove it. If you must show that Mr. Emefiele has committed a crime contrary to that section, then you must demonstrate that he awarded a contract, knowing full well that the invoice is inflated, and it was with the intention that the person receiving the contract would receive a kickback, the term that we used to use in those days, or whoever it was going to make inordinate profits from it. Excuse me. So those are things that you must prove. Otherwise, Mr. Emefiele will go through the trial and he'll go home scot-free.
Are you implying that the federal government has not really put their heart into this matter to look at what the law says and where the man breached it?
I don't know if it's the federal government, but let somebody who is doing the work look at it closely, because I'm sure Mr. Emefiele is going to have lawyers who will look at the charges, who will look at the evidence, and will ensure that they do their utmost to get Mr. Emefiele off the hook. Okay. And if you just get off the hook, you don't want to bring new charges against him.
Okay, so let me read this out, a portion of that Section 19, a portion of it. Let me read it out to you. Maybe it will help to clarify things. Any public officer who uses his office or position to gratify or confer any corrupt or unfair advantage upon himself or any relation or associate of the public officer or other public officers shall be guilty of an offence and shall on conviction be liable to an imprisonment of 5 years. So based on this Section 19, would you now say that you can speak on the charges laid out against the suspended CBN governor?
Now, if you're talking about conferring on himself, yes, then again you ask, what are the prices of these vehicles in market overs? If it's obvious that at the time the contract was awarded, a Land Cruiser was only 30 million, and he signed a contract for the purchase of that same vehicle for 77 million. Clearly, that was an intention. That would be an intention to just enrich himself. It would be a corrupt practice. Or if he did it for a friend, a colleague, or somebody, it was still the same. So that's why I said the evidence must show that at the time he awarded the contract for the purchase of a Land Cruiser for 77 million naira, it wasn't far less. It would be different, for example, if at the time he awarded the contract, the Land Cruiser was valued at 80 million and he was able to get a discount for 3 million, then you can't charge him for unjustly enriching anybody.
Okay, Mr. Adeloluwa, let me come back to you in a bit. We have some news that's just come in that President Bola Tinubu has released the list of appointments, the list of ministers and their ministries, and that, if I could just read out a few of them here: the Minister for Communications, Innovation and Digital Economy, Bosun Twani; the Minister of State Environment and Ecological Management, Ishak Salako. These are some of the names. The Minister for the Federal Capital Territory, former Governor of Rivers State, Nyesom Wike; Minister of Sports Development, Senator John Owaneno; Minister of State Petroleum Resources, Heineken Lokbobri; the Minister of State Gas Resources, Ekberikbe Ekbo; Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, Betta Edu; Minister of Youth, Abubakar Momo; Minister of Aviation and Aerospace Development, Festus Keyamo; Minister of Works, David Umahi, Minister of Women Affairs, Uju Kennedy, Minister of State, Labour and Employment, Nkiruka Onyeji-Ocha, Minister of Innovation, Science and Technology, Uche Nnaji, Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Doris Anite, Minister of Transportation, Adeboyega Oyetola, Minister of Tourism, Lola Ade John, Minister of Solid Minerals Development, Dele Alake, Minister of State Health and Social Welfare, Tunisia Alausa, and Minister of Power, Adedayo Adelabu. I'm sure there will be more on this list coming out. But let me ask you, Mr. Adelolua, what do you take? What's your take on this list as released by the presidency?
Well, I have only listened to them just now that you're reading that to me, but I can say for one that if Mr. Nyesom Wike is going to be Minister for Federal Capital Territory, it sounds to me like that will be the first time a Southerner will be the Minister for Federal Capital Territory. Correct me if I'm wrong. And then Mr. Dele Alake in charge of mineral resources. Well, I don't know how much exposure or experience he has with that. A lot of us would have thought it was going to be for information or what have you. But then again, I always believe that ministers can always be changed, swapped, and there can be a reshufflement of the cabinet. So whoever has been placed in any portfolio now, let's see how he performs. I don't know what my Leonard Silk, Festus Keyamo will be doing in innovation. But then again, let's see. But therefore, let's also bear in mind that we must get to a point where people who know what these ministries are about should be placed in those ministries. We don't want people to learn on the job. We haven't got that time. We haven't got that time.
Well, there are those who, as I said earlier, we're sure that there'll be more on this list. For instance, we've just heard about the Minister of State for Health. We've not heard about the Minister of Health, the substantive Minister of Health. But you said something earlier about people who understand the different ministries placed in those ministries. It would appear that, for one, when the Minister of Works, according to this list, is former governor of Ebonyi State, and there are those who would say that is a good choice for the Minister of Works, seeing what he did when he was governor of Ebonyi State. Would you agree with that?
Well, then again, you see, as I said, you need people who know what they're doing. Now, what they're doing may not necessarily mean what they studied in university or what their professional calling has been. It could mean that they have, like you said, if the governor of Ebonyi State has done well in Ebonyi State and we believe that he can do very well also as Minister of Works, so be it. But then again, if a minister is a technocrat, wherever you place him, he should be able to organize the ministry. But ministers are more than administrators. They are also policymakers, or at least they assist the federal government in formulating policies, especially policies relating to their ministries. So it would be very useful if you have ministers who know what they put. Then again, let's give them a chance and see how it pans out. But like I said earlier, we haven't got that much time. We need to get things up and running. We really need to get things up and running.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Mr. Kayode Adelolua. Thank you so much for coming on the Politics Today tonight. Adelola, thank you. And indeed, thank you for your submissions this evening. Politics Today will be back in a moment.
Thank you very much for having me.
Please stay there.
I keep drawing him. I think I'm desperate.
Is this dress even fine?
What if he doesn't like me?
He's here. And his spec. Joe? Same Joe.
Same Joe, minor differences. Same Joe, minor differences? Don't even think about judging Joe, because you're probably just like him. Why is the name on your business bank account Ahmed Aminu and not your business name? Same business, different name, right? Stop impersonating your business and get an account in your business name with MoneyPoint.
Whatever it takes to make sure you have a business account opened in your business name, we'll do it as your sure banker.
See me see trouble. Is this not the same me?
Open a bank account in your business name with MoneyPoint.
The Duchess International Hospital opened its doors in October 2021. The mission of the hospital is to reverse medical tourism. We take particular care here at the Duchess to bring together a combination of the brightest and the best locally, as well as Nigerians in the diaspora who are interested in returning to do very good work for the benefit of our patients here in this country.
The good thing is that we have all international expertise here, all international facilities here, international people working here. Everything is coming together in a space which was considered not great in terms of the availability of healthcare.
Access Bank, of course, has been able to provide us with a robust range of products and services that has enabled us to deliver that standard and quality of healthcare that is integral to our mission as an organization.
Hello, this is Premium Pension. How can we help?
Our experts work behind the scenes, enabling our members grow wealth to secure a premium tomorrow. We see your hard work and we make your money work hard for you. We are growing with you in commitment and service. Leveraging technology to meet your demands. Secure your future and pave way for the next generation. Embracing diversity with firm roots across the 36 states of Nigeria and the FCT. Premium Pension. Active today, premium tomorrow.
The Central Planning Committee, on behalf of the National Elder Statesman, Chief Dr. Edwin Kiabodo Clark, OFR, CON, announces the launch of his autobiography titled Brutally Frank. Date, Thursday, 17th August 2023. Venue, International Conference Center, Abuja. Time, 11 a.m. Chairman of the occasion, General Yakubu Gowon, GCFR, former head of state. Guest of honor, all former presidents, governors of the 36 states, and members of the National Assembly. Keynote speaker, His Excellency Senator Godswill Obod Akpabio, CON, President of the Senate. Chief Launcher, General T.Y. Danjuma, GCON. Royal Fathers of the Day are Royal Fathers from the 6 geopolitical zones. Book reviewer, Professor Osareme Osumbo. Chief host, Governors Doye Diri of Bayelsa State, Sharif Oboroweri of Delta State, Bala Mohammed of Bauchi State, Agbu Kefas of Taraba State, Simini Alai Fubara of River State, and Godwin Obaseki of Edo State. Announcer, Central Planning Committee.
In today's world, our lifestyle, both at work and at play, depends on connectivity. Our connectivity depends on the devices that make it possible, and these devices depend on electric power. When power fails, our life shrinks, our work drops, and our joy dips. JRB Solar Energy Systems are here to ensure that we enjoy uninterruptible power, uninterruptible joy. Whether you're running a business, an institution, or just a home you return daily to rest, JRB has got you covered. No project is too big for our super digital inverters, long-lasting batteries, and efficient solar panels. Go. Dream on. Change your world. JRB Solar Inverters, batteries, solar panels, solar streetlights, and more. Telephone 0906 752 1111. Email sales@jrbsolar.com. With JRB, the sun's gonna shine on everything you do.
Welcome back, and now we're switching topics to look at the situation in Niger Republic. Yesterday, the Northern Elders Forum had a meeting where they rose asking the leaders of ECOWAS to withdraw the sanctions on the Republic of Niger and to jettison the idea of a military intervention to to restore democratic order in the country. The spokesperson of that forum, Mr. Akim Baba Ahmed, gave the advice at a news conference in Abuja. He appealed to President Tinubu, who is the chairman of ECOWAS, to prioritize the interest of Africa over those of other nations who are pushing for military intervention. According to him, the removal of the sanctions on Niger will smoothen the negotiations process to restore democratic order in that country. Well, in the studio today, and here we do have the spokesperson of the Northern Elders Forum, Mr. Akim Baba Ahmed, who is here to join us. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
So yesterday, the Elders Forum rose and came up with 4 major resolutions. Amongst them, one is the removal of the sanctions that Nigeria had placed on Niger Republic. The other one being the balance, an advice to the president to balance his position as chairman and his position as the president of Nigeria. And if I do remember correctly, no military action. I'm sure. What are the other resolutions that your forum came up with?
Well, we commended everybody who has contributed to the search for peace, because we believe that is the most important thing. And we were very clear in terms of reminding Mr. President and ECOWAS that Nigerians emphatically say no to any military activity in Niger. It will not be helpful, it will complicate the matters more, and that Nigeria should be trusted to initiate and sustain a dialogue with the junta that is currently holding the Nigerian president and holding on to power, and to see whether we can actually make a headway rather than throw threats at the people of Niger. Clearly, it hasn't worked. 2 weeks, 3 weeks into the coup, into the first ultimatum. The first ultimatum, they gave Niger 1 week.
Yeah.
1 week came and passed, nothing happened. They met again and said this time they're activating a standby force. I haven't seen any standby force. All it is doing is just making the situation worse.
But you do recollect that the junta had said they are open for negotiations. I mean, they said that last week. So with the advice from the Elders Forum and the advice from other units that are saying, okay, dialogue is better. But you do also remember that the president in the last meeting of ECOWAS actually said diplomatic advances and negotiation and dialogue would be prioritized. So doesn't that look like he's already walking that path?
Well, not exactly. Not exactly. In the morning of the day they had the meeting, the second extraordinary summit, those were his language was more conciliatory. He said we will prioritize dialogue. The communique of the meeting he chaired, our president, was quite adamant on the fact that the military option is going to be, in fact, not just that it will remain on the table, but it will be activated. So there's a problem, and that is why we recommended that President Tinubu should remember his place in history. This is a unique opportunity for him to show statesmanship. How do you balance a huge responsibility, for instance, of being chairman of ECOWAS, and the leader of the largest country in ECOWAS, 60% of ECOWAS, a country where virtually everybody had said, don't involve the military in the resolution of the conflict in Niger. And then your country on its own, either in support of ECOWAS resolutions or more to tighten the screw, now puts the people of Niger and Nigeria, because there are 7 states, let me remind you, 7 states in Nigeria that border Niger.
Yes.
Into extreme hardship. Life is very, very difficult. The sanctions that Nigeria is currently imposing on Niger and indirectly on its own people is biting very difficult, and it's making negotiations more difficult. Nigeria has a huge goodwill in Niger. We have a huge clout in Niger. If ECOWAS had the wisdom to assign Nigeria or to trust Nigeria with the responsibility of saying, look, why don't you talk to, you say they're your brothers, you said you have centuries of relationship, you've done this before, and we did do this before. Twice there was a coup in Niger, twice Nigeria successfully intervened. If they had the wisdom to say, Nigeria, you are the most influential nation in the whole of West Africa, as far as Nigeria is concerned. They have received our delegations, they have even apologized to the president for the manner in which they treated Abdul Salami and President General Abdul Salami and the Sultan of Sokoto. They have received Muslim clerics. They have said their only grievance against ECOWAS was that nobody asked them, why are you doing what you're doing? They said, if somebody had asked us why we moved against Bazoum, we would have explained. Now, I'm not apologizing for that. We are not supporting coups. But what I'm saying is that there's an opportunity. What we're saying in the Northern Elders Forum is examine and reinforce the dialogue option and allow Nigeria to exercise the huge responsibility which it has in terms of engaging the leaders currently, rather than these threats about, oh, we would come in with soldiers, we would come in with soldiers. Well, yesterday, I think it was yesterday, between yesterday and today, I heard that the Ghanaian Assembly, like our Senate, had said to the Ghanaian president, don't send a single Ghanaian soldier. Today, the African Union said they don't support a military action in Niger.
Well, you do know that the Nigerian Senate had had not given approval to the president's request to release the military.
Like
we'll come back to this conversation because there are those who are concerned about the cause of these coups. There's a coup in Burkina Faso, there's a coup in Mali, and they have tied it to bad governance, and that is likely to spread. But we'll come back to this conversation. Let's get back to that story that came in earlier about the release of the ministerial list from the presidency, and we did call out some of those names. If we could have it on the screen right now, those that have been given the different portfolios. Yes, you have it there. Bosun Tijani, I'm trying to see that clearly now. Yes, so Minister for Communication, Innovation and Digital Economy, Bosun Tijani. Minister of State Environment and Ecological Management is Ishak Salako. Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Wale Edun. Minister of Marine and Blue Economy, Bumi Tunji. The Minister of Power, Adedayo Adelabu. The Minister of State Health and Social Welfare, Tunisia Alausa. The Minister of Solid Minerals Development, Dele Alake. Minister of Tourism, Lola Adejan. Minister of Transportation, Adegboyega Oyetola. The Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Doris Anite. Minister of Innovation, Science and Technology, Uche Naji. The Minister of State, Labour and Employment, Nkiruka Onyejota. Minister of Women Affairs, Uju Kennedy. The Minister of Works, David Umahi. Minister of Aviation and Aerospace Development, Festus Keyamo. Minister of Youth, Abubakar Momo. Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, Betta Edu. The Minister of State Gas Resources, Ekberikbe Ekbo. Minister of State Petroleum Resources, Heineken Lukboberi. Minister of Sports Development, Senator John Owaneno. Minister of Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike. Now, as I said earlier, we do know that about 45 names were confirmed by the Senate, so we're expecting that more of these names and portfolios will be released shortly, and we'll bring that to you as soon as we get them. But let's get back to our conversation here. Mr. Babagmet, we want to react to that list you just heard.
I was hoping to see Minister of Foreign Affairs because of all the ministers that President Tinubu requires now. It's wise counsel from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and its affiliates or agencies. I think that the absence of a Minister of Foreign Affairs and quite possibly the distance between the president and agencies that should advise him in terms of the conduct of foreign policy is hurting the country.
So you think a Minister of Foreign Affairs coming in immediately will be good to go in this matter?
And hopefully he will get a good person who would, let me use the word in a general way. Yes, and hit the ground running. Because we do have a crisis that requires the major inputs of the Minister of Foreign Affairs. And very, very, very delicate handling. And only the Minister of Foreign Affairs can do that. I don't know who's been handling that portfolio, but the gaps are showing. I should know this. I was a permanent secretary in that ministry many, many years ago. So it is a ministry that is critical, and I'm hoping...
So you think the permanent secretary there now is not handling the matters as he or she should?
Permanent secretaries don't get too close to presidents. I mean, ordinarily they should. A president who doesn't have a minister will reach to the permanent secretary. What I'm saying is that there are gaps in our thinking and in our reaction to events, particularly on Niger and West Africa, that clearly are not benefiting from the best advice that we should get.
Okay,
we are doing some things wrong.
Okay, let's get back to that matter of the coup in Niger. The junta had said they're going to prosecute the president, Bazoum, for what they said? Treason. Yeah. High treason, if I remember, those are the words they use. What do you think?
Oh, we had that. But if we had a negotiating framework now, those are exactly the kind of words we would ask them. We would say to the people of Niger, we heard you are going to prosecute Bazoum. Can you give us additional information about what it is that you're prosecuting him over? Is this a red herring? Is it real? Are you really going to do that? And do you recognize the fact that you actually seized power from this man? That's treasonable too. Do you have the moral and the legal authority to actually prosecute a president that you have overthrown, violating every rule and every law? Those are the kind of delicate questions you would ask if you were actually communicating government to government or ECOWAS to Niger. But those communications aren't there.
The question I want to ask you is, from the Northern Elders Forum, seeing that there are 7 northern states that are bordering Niger, one would want to believe that the Elders Forum on this side of the divide is reaching out to the elders on the other side. What's the conversation you're having, and what's the perspective you're getting from there?
The perspectives we're getting there is that a lot of people in Niger can't believe that Nigeria is reacting in the way it is. They just can't believe that we can put them in such difficulty. Look, just the fact that we remove the plug on the power we supply to Niger is putting the Nigerian people and the economy there in great difficulties. More difficulties than they have ever experienced. And it's hurting northern communities close to Niger too. Whatever happens in Niger automatically happens in Nigeria. That is how intimately involved Niger and Nigeria are. So this is not the time to turn the screw. This is the time to talk.
But are the elders on that side having conversations with the junta to say, okay, look, these are the reasons why this is happening on the other side. What grounds are you willing to shift so that we can also negotiate on this other side? As in, be the go-between.
Well, look, the two key public mediation or the 2 key initiatives we saw, the one involving the former Emir of Kano and the leader, and the Islamic clerics, all involved people, their counterparts from Niger. And they were granted audience. And let me remind you, these 2 groups, the Emir of Kano and the clerics, all flew, in spite of the no-fly zone, all flew into Niamey and met with the leader of the coup. So there is a huge amount of goodwill there. It's not as if people can't believe that we can be at war. Under any circumstances, Nigeria would not go to war with Niger. Nigerian soldiers will not turn, Niger and Nigerian soldiers will not turn their guns at each other. This is not a problem that cannot be solved through dialogue and an effective and rigorous application of the dialogue process. And the dialogue process is wonderful if you really genuinely apply it. But look at the other side of it. If you are going to go into, and today, as I told you, let me remind you, the African Union specifically said they don't support the ECOWAS position that the military option can be activated in Niger. This is the African Union going against ECOWAS. The Nigerian people have said, don't send our soldiers to Niger. Ghanaian people said, don't send our soldiers to Niger. Many countries in ECOWAS have said, no, we have nothing to do with this. So that's why we said to President Tinubu, you are wearing 2 hats. You have to find a way to balance them in such a way that history will record you as a statesman who was able to balance these 2 positions. Don't get carried away by one of them. Listen to your Nigerian people. You were first a Nigerian president before you became chairman of ECOWAS. Otherwise, you would never be anywhere near ECOWAS. And you're accountable to the Nigerian people. And the Nigerian people are saying, look, let us explore the diplomatic option more vigorously. Use your influence in ECOWAS. Use your influence in Niger. And find a way in which Nigeria can actually broker some kind of an understanding. What is this talk about treason against Bazoum? Why do we need to put the people of Niger under such difficulties and preclude the option of sustaining the level of goodwill and brotherhood that exists between Nigeria and Niger, and therefore make negotiations more difficult. Why are we
seeing
to do
that
this?
right now we're in the tight, the president is in a tight situation. AU says don't go, the Nigerian people are saying don't go, and indeed a lot of people around are saying do not go. But there are others who are saying just leave that on standby. And if I do recollect, the ECOWAS military force was supposed to be on standby, not deployed yet. So at the end of the day, what would the elders forum mandate? What would be the word to the president? What would be the way forward?
Well, they meet tomorrow, Thursday. Our word to them is listen to the voices of your people. West African people are against a war in another country over a coup. Listen to your people. The diplomatic option is still there, can be strengthened, and can work. Listen to your people. There are extra African countries, interests outside Africa. I don't have to mention them, but they are not African interests, pushing us to war because they have strategic interests to protect. We have to be very careful. We can fight each other while other interests outside Africa are just simply taking away our resources. We're already poor in this world, and suddenly very powerful nations in the world are trying to put us to continue to fight so they can continue to exploit us. We must avoid this. We'll be fighting each other. We'll be fighting brothers. And so you have to ask yourself, at what cost?
At what point would the Africans come together to begin to protect and govern their people effectively and protect the resources
Well, that's
they have?
exactly, you are asking the right question. When African leaders respect their own people, when African leaders remember that they're elected and they're accountable, when African people stop stealing the resources of their people, when African leaders stop violating the Constitution, when our elections start producing genuinely elected people, and we stop all these arguments about you are illegitimate and you're illegitimate, and it makes little difference between an illegitimate civilian president and an illegitimate military government, then democracy will have a stronger base to stay in Africa. Basically, we don't want to pay this attention. We have to ask ourselves this question. Why is it so easy to do a coup in Africa? And why do people come out in their hundreds of thousands to say, welcome? It's a very serious question we have to ask. What is the fate of democracy in Africa? Is it working? All the arguments we have over elections, you are legitimate, you rig an election, you don't rig an election, you have poor leaders. How can you tolerate a leader who has been in power for 20 years, 30 years? So people come and serve 2 terms. And suddenly now they want to prolong their terms into 3 terms. We tolerated we tolerated Mali, we tolerated Burkina Faso, we virtually tolerated Guinea-Bissau. What moral right do we have now to draw the line and say, okay, that's it? We should, because military rule doesn't do anything other than to freeze the wrongs. And then after 2, 3, 4 years, just simply unfreeze it. And then we are stuck where we were 2, 3 years ago. We are against coups.
All right.
We would like to see an end to the Nigerian debacle as quickly as possible, but we believe that the diplomatic option is the best way to do this.
Thank you so much, Mr. Akim Baba Ahmed. Thank you for joining us this morning. Spokesperson for the Northern Elders Forum. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's the show for today. I want to thank you for letting us be a part of your evening. I'm Nell Taigwe, sitting in for a regular host, Akim Baba.
Of extreme opulence lies a well-tailored art of contemporary living. Comes another breathtaking architectural masterpiece, a waterfront property masterfully created by a visionary team of world-renowned architects crowned with premium fittings. Leonardo is about to offend every iota of mediocrity with Fendi. The Leonardo now sells at a 25% price off. Forget every notion of luxury you've ever known. Own the Leonardo.
Hello and welcome to News Track. I'm Millicent Walker. These are some of the stories and reports we're tracking this hour. Nigerians now have an idea of what President Bola Tinubu's cabinet will look like in a list released to News